Hello and welcome everybody to this week's book review. Today we are going to be reviewing the second book in the Battling the Host of Hell series by Worley, and that is Conquering the Host of Hell. So, Conquering is the second book. Like I said, this is the sequel to Battling the Host of Hell. And if you didn't see our review for Battling, I would suggest that you go back and watch that first, because that comes first in the series. Conquering was published in 1977, just about 1 year after Battling, and it has a very intimate relationship with the previous book. So the author, Worley, if you don't know who Worley is, Worley was a prolific deliverance minister in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s who, for a relatively short ministry being 23 years in deliverance, he discovered so much, he pioneered so much, he brought so much in deliverance and spiritual warfare to the forefront, and that was a very rich 23 years. He wrote, I think it's 15 books. I'm not going to count them. I have most of them on my shelf here, and I'm going to review all of them at some point. But he added so much to the deliverance world. Okay, when you have these books, you have all this information, you have all of this richness that you discovered. And the reason I think Worley got so far, where a lot of other deliverance ministers kind of peaked out and tapped out at some point, was that the Lord told him deliverance is an unfolding revelation. Keep learning more. And that's what he did. He kept learning more. So every book in the series is basically an update onto what his church discovered. So, Conquering the Host of Hell specifically is described in the preface almost like an appendage to Battling. When Worley published Battling the Host of Hell, back then I guess publishing was cost per page and it was too big, so they had to cut a lot out of Battling the Host of Hell, and most of the material they cut out is comprised of Conquering. Now, and there was some other stuff that I believe they updated in the year as they learned a little bit more, but basically the stuff that was cut out of Battling was put into Conquering, and Conquering was published a year later. So Battling is a regular book, as you would think. It kind of has a progression of thought. It has, each chapter built on the previous chapter, whereas Conquering, which is the case for most of the subsequent books in the series, is less like a regular book that builds ideas off of one another and more of a collection of notes and discoveries and ideas and thoughts that have come about in deliverance. What is the good stuff about this book? So all of those little notes and discoveries and little chapters are excellent. They are fantastic. When you read these things, you will learn a lot about deliverance ministry. You will grow a lot by reading these things. A couple of examples. There's a chapter in here on the curse of Jezebel, where he describes in vivid detail how Jezebel spirits invade the family, destroy the family priesthood, and destroy the kids, destroy the mom, and it screws everything up. And when you read it, you can see this happening in families. You can see this in people around you, and the way he describes it just hits the nail on the head. Another example, and probably the most frightening chapter in this book, is called Buying the Preacher. It's chapter 4. And Worley describes how demons would sometimes manifest and try to make a bargain with him. Hey, we'll give you money, we'll give you this, just stop casting demons out. Well, the last time this happened, a high-ranking demon manifested and offered to buy Worley out, but he added that you can keep doing deliverance, the demons will come out with a word, we'll make you rich, we'll make you famous, you'll be a famous deliverance minister, but you can only do it when we say so. And that's chilling, because I think that there are people that were alive at his time and alive today that gave into this. How many people could have started off well, but either knowingly or unknowingly was given a deal by the devil or by the demons to back out of God's plan and do some sort of counterfeit ministry? It's really frightening, but this is the truth. This is the stuff that this book has. It really gets down to the nitty-gritty. Next thing about this book is, like I said, it was cut from Battling. So this is the excess from Battling, and a lot of it was testimonies. This has more testimonies in it, from what I understand, than any of the other books in the series, and it makes up about 40% of the book. And if you read the testimonies in this book, and really in all of the Host of Hell series, if you don't have compassion and your heart isn't torn and you don't see the need for deliverance when you're reading these testimonies, then you don't have the heart of the Father. The stories in here of people from around the country that were hurting and broken and miserable, who eventually came across Hegwish and Worley and then got some help, it's astounding. And I've said this before, nobody can persuade me that it's God's will for there to be a handful of people doing deliverance around the country with millions and millions and millions of people so bound, so broken, that they have to hunt high and low and find some deliverance church or some deliverance person in a corner somewhere. That is not God's will. I don't believe that's God's will. Recently, I had a family drive 3 hours in New Hampshire to come and see me. Why is that God's will? Why can't they go 10 minutes down the street to get deliverance from a local church? The reason is because we don't want to do what Jesus says we should do. We don't have the heart of the Father for the broken and for the bound. So when you read this, when you read these testimonies, it is heart-wrenching. Many of these testimonies even made me tear up, and it's really astounding. One of the last ones in this book, I'll just share briefly, was a veteran of World War II who got gangrene and all these other terrible diseases from his time in the Southeast Pacific. And he was in incredible pain for decades, from World War II up until sometime in the 70s. Terrible, terrible, terrible pain. I mean, like, he has this skin-eating disease. The doctors, basically all they can do is take some alcohol and iodine and soak his skin in it, and then it burns his skin off, and it's agonizing pain, and the morphine doesn't work, nothing works, just year after year after year, the diseases keep getting worse and worse and worse, and he's bedridden until finally he meets Worley, and Worley, lo and behold, casts spirits out of him, and then when the spirits leave, the man gets healed. And I believe, I could be wrong, but there were other people who prayed for healing and nothing happened, but Worley cast the spirits out and then he got healed. And to see God come through when people are so hurting and broken, to see the Lord's miraculous power reach people's life is absolutely touching. Are there any cons to this book? Yes, I would say this, that this is not a book that is worth reading as a standalone book. So if you haven't read any of the books, don't start with Conquering, start with Battling, because everything else is built off of Battling. Now, if you have read Battling and you haven't read this, then yes, definitely read this as a very good book, but it doesn't stand on its own feet. The foundation is in Battling the Host of Hell. The second thing, like I said, this could be a pro, this could be a con, but this isn't like a organized set of thoughts where each chapter builds on each other. So if you're looking for more like an organized kind of explanation of things and a breakdown or a basic deliverance book, this is not the book for that. This is more of an index or a collection of things that Hegwish and Worley discovered in deliverance that have been found to be helpful. And that's what it's for. Now, overall, I would say this book gets an 8 out of 10. It's very good, very enjoyable. You will learn a lot from it, but it doesn't stand on its own 2 feet, and you should read Battling first if you're interested in this book. I hope you enjoyed today's review. If you did, please give us some feedback, consider subscribing, and let us know down below. You have a blessed day in Jesus' name.